And here we are. Thanks for being with us today. I think we're going to chat. In our last episode, we talked about specifically power animals, which Nick has more to share with us about that today. And I think we're also going to bring in just working with animals in general and then see what else happens from there.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. Um, yeah, I was just you know, thinking like as my understandings of power animals and how to use them evolves, just to talk about it on the podcast because it could be a way for me to bring in a deeper understanding of it for me and just, communicating with others sort of how I'm experiencing it. Uh yeah, and from the last time, um we were talking about how animals are animals and power animals are spirits of power animals. And, it's been leading to the question in the mind for me of, um, do all power animals start as disembodied? And that's really what I've been exploring uh, this past week in that understanding of it. Um, and yeah, it brings to mind, like power animals don't necessarily have to be like all the animals that are, like even, you know or it doesn't have to be in the form of like animals that are like actually living. Like you could have a power animal that takes the form of a dragon or a unicorn or any kind of like mythical beast, mythical animals that there are.
Anything that's in like the collective
Yeah, yeah,
consciousness.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, so that's really been my exploration through this week. I've been having a kind of a busy week, so hopefully I can uh hopefully this week I plan to conduct a few ceremonies to explore it even deeper in the strata dimensions and the upper world and the underworld, middle world.
What's interesting for me is I never thought about um, a past of the spirits, like had they changed from one thing to another.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I think about it too. I've been thinking about it this week. Is like, were they once an animal and then, you know, they maybe passed on and, they're disembodied and then they still take on the form of an animal and they're, teaching you about a specific power.
Yeah, it's hard to know when we don't know what's beyond this alive thing.
Yeah, yeah, maybe it's like a question there's not really an answer to, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I think that's the hallmark of a good question.
Yeah, yeah, I like that.
Then there's not
That's
necessarily
good.
a cut and dry answer. Maybe we kind of what's the word? I don't want to say fool ourselves, but getting kind of like stuck in that this is the only way it could be, or that's the only way it could be.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to have this just sort of be like an evolution of a topic too, because it is a principle in shamanism, and when you learn about the principles, to be stuck in only thinking that it's going to be a certain way could be really, really limiting for you, and so uh the best thing to do is to just understand that the principles are going to evolve and the understanding of the principles are going to, evolve, and to be really fluid with it in your understandings.
Yeah, I think that's important, whether or not it's in shamanism or just understanding of life in general. That things could take on a different meaning based on your understandings and your experiences, and that
Yeah,
yeah, there's just so much to know and so much that we don't know. And yeah, again, to just kind of get stuck in, well, this is how it is, it's really limiting.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
Definitely important to be fluid.
yeah,
Bruce Lee, be like water.
Yeah, I listened to a really great podcast about water, actually.
The water takes the form of the cup, but it is not the cup. I love Bruce Lee.
I don't know too much about him.
He seems like a cool dude. Yeah. So have you explored your power animals this week actively?
I did, and I'm just feeling kind of stuck in what I've been stuck in before with um, my shamanism in my communication. But I'm open to being unstuck,
Huh?
unstuck around that.
What's uh what's the blockage for you?
I think it comes down to to the receptivity and some of what we were talking about just having clearer communication.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
So have you noticed since you set that intention of the clear communication, how's that how have you experienced that this week with setting those intentions and then working on it, even if it's maybe a small movement or however you like to describe it.
Hmm. Well, I guess I did act on. I mean, I wonder. All right, so I talked about how I have which I didn't know was my power animal, of that rainbow snake, because I didn't know the definition of power animal. I've just been working with animals, I would say, as spirit animals. Well, in my like conscious understanding of it. So then I did set the intention. Well, one with my principal guide, and also with the other, that rainbow snake. That's the power animal to help me with my health. Well, with the clear communication, and then also helping me with learning more about what I need to do to optimize my health, or to like be, you know, as healthy as possible, or have everything be in balance. And then I actually did take action this week on getting this cream, which I had been telling myself like I was going to do for a week or so, and I didn't. So I mean, maybe there was that communication or that help.
Mm. Oh yeah, that's interesting too. And power animals really can set up, having meetings with people and meeting other people who then can, help you
Yeah,
with things. So that's pretty cool.
yeah. I noticed that too. Just my, and I don't want to go back to calling it receptivity, but my maybe awareness of things being like right there. Sometimes just like, whew, you just go through the motions and don't fully take in everything that is kind of like right in front of you. And so what I'm specifically referencing here is so I'm practicing also just like being more having more gratitude for things, and being more, well, yeah, so having more gratitude. So I realized a few weeks ago we went to visit my family, and we had a very lovely party. My brother hosted a party for his daughter's first birthday, and it was in a restaurant, and like we had good food, and it was my family and friends, and we all hung out and had a great time. And then on the next day, my mom took us out, my family, my brother's family, my mom, my sister-in-law's dad was there, and we like all had this like great brunch. And my mom paid for the brunch, and I just like like, no, like, oh my God, this is amazing. Your mom just like brought you this great food and you got to stay with your family. It was just like, oh, this is what we do. Oh, that just happened. Like, no
Mm,
like recognition of like the specialness of it, or the like, wow, you just received like all this great free food. That's awesome. I guess it's
Yeah.
almost like finding the miraculous in the mundane instead of
Yeah.
just taking everything for granted.
Yeah, I mean, uh I think it's about focusing on the experience rather than being caught up in the narrative of the experience of like it's like the yearly thing we go and we celebrate our birthdays and this is what we do and you know rather than be focusing in the narrative, placing focus on the experience. And as you said, you found gratitude for, getting to hang out with your family and having some delicious food together and celebrating life. Like, yeah, those things I consider really special too. It's awesome.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
it's awesome you can find gratitude for that.
Yeah, it is awesome.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
it's so
lucky too.
interesting. Yeah. I mean, and just really realizing, so this is what I just took this class with Dr. Sam talking about wealth, but not like in material or monetary terms, but just, yeah, just like having rich experiences, and that it could only be like the wealth could only be experienced in the now, like with the presence. You only get the present when you're present. You only you only get the present when you're present.
Yeah. I like that.
Or you only
Yeah.
get the presence with your presence.
It takes mental training too to uh get yourself out of the narrative and take your awareness out of it and place it on the experience.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it's a
I
daily
don't think
practice.
yeah, I mean, I think culturally we're taught to be within the narrative, and I don't think there's any right or wrong about that, but I think that is what we're taught. And to do something different, it just takes effort to sort of break those patterns in the mind where you are focusing in the whole narrative of it. And I mean, I can still catch myself being in the narrative. I just noticed when the training's working, when I recognize it, and then at that recognizing point or the recognition of it, what I'm trying to say. But like that point where I recognize that I'm in the narrative, that is when the training kicks in. It's that recognition. Mixing my words here. It's the recognition of it, and it's that at that point, then I could focus on the experience rather than being caught in the narrative of it.
Can you explain a little bit more of being in the narrative? Because I don't think I quite resonate with those words. And I also am curious of what you think, that how we're taught. Maybe, and I'll understand that more clearly when you explain.
Okay, so I would say what it means to be focusing in the narrative of something is like today, Super Bowl Sunday, right? And there's a certain narrative that's associated with it. For me, like, okay, my housemate's having a party and I don't really want to be like around too many drunk people. I just, I guess like, no right or wrong. If that's what they like to do, then like that's cool. I just don't want to be around it. And there's that whole narrative of like that's gonna happen later, and I don't really want to, be associated with that, and I'd rather just have a peaceful night. And I'm going to, you have to choose between either hang out at the house or go to my mom's house, and then at my mom's house, hang out there. And that's the whole narrative of it that's playing out mentally in my mind right now, when really I'm just experiencing being on a podcast with you talking about it right now. And what may happen later may or may not happen. And so like that's the whole narrative of it, and focusing on the experience now would be really to be focusing on the conversation about what may happen later. And it's really, I think it's really based out of just cycles of time. That's the whole narrative of it. And I think it's natural. I don't think there's any, like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think it's a matter of right or wrong. It's just a matter of, um, instead of being focused in the whole narrative and then believing the whole narrative and the whole story associated then with that narrative about something that may or may not happen later, because really
Mm,
there's no guarantees for what may or may not happen later. By focusing on the now, you could just place your focus on that thought of, sort of the immediate future of later today, rather than be caught within it and thinking like this is going to happen.
okay, I think I kind of understand what you're saying. So rather than being in the story of the experience, being in the experience, I
Yes,
think it's a
exactly.
little bit. I mean, I don't disagree that that's there, but I also think part of it's maybe not even being in the story, but just being unconscious in the, like, it's being so habitual
Mm,
that you're
yeah.
not even like consciously aware, and that, yeah, maybe like you are up in your mind but not necessarily even in your story. It could be like, after this, well, I guess that might be like a story, but after this I have to do that, or like, I have to get all these things done today, which I don't necessarily think is a story. I think it is just like mind chatter, but not
Mm,
necessarily. I mean, there's some kind of narrative, but maybe not
yeah.
like narrative in the form of like a story. You know what I mean? Like there's a
Yeah, there's
narrative, like there's like this
I know what
voice
you
in your
mean.
head that
Yeah.
you're not necessarily controlling because you're paying attention to it. I kind of find it to just be more, for myself at least,
Yeah, how do you
going
experience
through
it?
the motions, like, or I have to get all this done so I can do that. Which I think has like some kind of overlapping to what you're saying, but a little bit um
Yeah, let me be clear on
different.
like let me find some clarity on what I'm saying. I mean that the narrative has, a linear time associated with it. A, B, C, D. I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna do that, and then the story of it would, be the details. I'm going to, after I'm done with the podcast, I'm gonna go downstairs and I'm gonna cook a meal, and then I'm gonna come upstairs and I'm gonna read about, some business, and then probably watch some anime, and then, get ready and go on a hike before I go to my mom's. And I always find that interesting too, right? So like linear time as not being exactly linear, because like I just described it as before I go to my mom's, which is actually later. So before I go to my mom's, I'm going to go on a little bit of a hike, and then I'm going to go to my mom's. And so like that's the whole story of it, where the narrative of it is like, like to that, to that, to that. Later on, I'm going to do this and that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see what you're saying. I also see how you're relating it to time.
Yeah, I mean, the a narrative is associated with linear time.
Hmm.
And then the story of it, is, I would say, getting into the nitty gritty.
Is a narrative associated with linear time?
Uh, it's definitely associated with time. I would, okay, let's explore that. Is a narrative associated with linear time? So, all right, in a narrative, right, it's usually progressing along and progressing along and progressing along, right? And so there's a beginning and an end of a narrative. So then I guess the question is, what's linear time? Is linear time, going from A to B to C to D?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to like also start off defining time, and also like defining the narrative. I see what you're saying, that like a narrative has a beginning and an end. Um, but I don't know, does linear time always signify like a beginning and an end?
Um,
Or
does linear time always signify a beginning and an end? Hmm.
I don't really think that would be like
I think the begin okay, so
essential.
I think the beginning and the end, and then like what's in the middle, that's all a narrative. That's how it seems. And so perhaps then linear time is sort of like the description of like, okay, you know, as I gave that example of like, before I go to my mom's today, I'm gonna go on a hike. Even though technically, like if you think about what before is and like how it's normally used, it's like before, it's the past, when really I'm talking about the future in this case. So it's just an interesting, how you can have these words that, hold different have different meaning. So I think it's an interesting use of words. But linear time, you know, I mean, we know linear time. If you think about like a lifespan, or you think about like, tripping around on a planet, tripping on a planet around the sun. But that seems okay. So then that always brings up the question in my mind of is cyclical time and linear time the same thing, or am I just being semantical? And
Well,
I
I
don't know.
don't, well, cyclical and linear, I think, are two different ideas.
I think so too.
And I think like cyclical time is more, I was going to say related to what time actually is, but I don't even know if that's actually true.
From my understanding of it, through the learning of modern shamanism, is that we often think about linear time as real time, but in modern shamanism, I learned something different, and that the only real time is now, and that linear time is a concept in the mind that goes along a narrative.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something else that time is besides just now. Like that thing that makes the now is
Time
what
is,
is time.
time
Part of
is
it.
the universe is, source is, God is.
I think of it as like a container almost, as like time. Like I think there is this thing that somehow time in the universe, but I think of it as almost like a container for the experience. And then the linear thing is like a measure that was created to mark, like almost to measure the movement within the
Yeah.
container. And then we put it on this thing that like we say has a beginning and is moving somewhere with an end, maybe.
That's interesting. That's interesting because the way you just put it, I thought, linear time is that, conceptual measuring tool that's measuring time, but not actually time itself.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think we got somewhere with that one.
maybe. I love
Maybe.
talking about time, but like it's making my stomach feel sick right now. I mean, I love thinking about time. It's such an interesting idea. I almost came to it as like maybe it's like gravity. Like are we sitting around and thinking like where did gravity come from? What is it? Like,
I'm sure Einstein was thinking those questions.
hey. But almost just thinking of it as this thing that's like inherent to life itself. Well, although maybe that's not true. I don't know because like is there gravity in outside of like in other galaxies?
That's a good question. I would say yes. It seems
I
to
would
be
say
the
I
thing.
don't know.
It seems to be the thing holding everything together,
Yeah.
including our galaxy and other galaxies.
I mean, certainly our galaxy.
Yeah. Now, when you get down to quantum physics, now then I'm not sure about all of that, but it seems that's maybe where we could ask the question of does gravity exist in quantum physics? I'm sure that's a interesting question to Google.
I think isn't that like the one of the problems that it doesn't behave the same way, so it's not like a constant not yeah, so I think that kind of gets where like the science gets
Yeah, it just
like the
breaks
math or
down.
something and the science doesn't work.
Yeah, it just breaks down at that
Yeah,
point.
I think
That's what I've
so. But I'm
heard.
not 100% certain. This is not my area of
Me
expertise.
neither. Me neither. I'm just spouting off what I've heard other people say.
Yeah, and I'm just saying from my own experience because like I said I do think about time quite a bit. Um because I feel like when we talk about time, it's almost like saying like money doesn't exist, time doesn't exist. I mean, clearly it does. We all agree on it, you know.
Yeah, it exists. It
It
totally
makes like
exists.
like linear time, you know, like it gives you the ability to talk about before and after and to like
Right.
make sense of
They're
an
important.
experience,
Yeah,
make
they're
sense of a life.
important concepts. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not saying any of this to like degrade any of those
No, no, no.
understandings
And
or
I don't
anything
think
like
that
that.
you
I just think it's
are.
fun to explore, you know? And we were saying about like linear time being a concept in the mind. I mean, from my experience of it, for me that seems to be true. And like when you think about the now time, every sun in the galaxy, or yeah, like or every star in our galaxy, the Milky Way, is existing now. Every galaxy is existing now. Every planet is, right where it's at now. Every human being is doing their thing now. So it's just like that, you know, infinite time on an infinite scale. It's mind blowing.
Yeah. All to say, we just still get to be present.
Yes, yes.
Still
All
working
that's
on the present. I think that's an important thing for myself, at least.
yeah, yeah. I noticed too what you're saying about gratitude, and yeah, yeah. Being in the present perhaps helps that
Helps the
rather,
gratitude.
yeah, rather than like focusing on like the story, like stories where things can go wrong and things can go horrible, and just having that focus in the story rather than like looking at it as like what's actually going on now while we're just talking, perhaps uh focusing on those stories, and and when you could find that presence now where you're just that you're thinking about a story and a narrative, you can find the gratitude to even be capable of thinking about a story and a narrative, and having a brain and a body, and a heart in the body that is supporting your brain function to be able to ever even think about stories and narratives and words like time and universe and source.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I've been practicing just like bringing in gratitude just to bring it in so I could be more aware of its presence.
I really, really enjoy the heartmath.org website that you shared with me, because that's
Mm,
specifically what they were talking about is, like intentionally focusing on the heart and intentionally focusing on things that you are already, grateful for.
yeah, yeah, that's what I do. So I've been like lighting my candle because for me that's when I it's so funny. I said this actually to my kids one time. I'm like, I was inviting God in, but they're like, isn't God always here? I'm like, yeah. But
Wow, that's awesome.
I know, but I'm like, yeah, but now I specifically know he's here or God is here, not he, but
Yeah,
God.
it's the recognizing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And then I brought some stuff in that I just found outside. And then I just light my candle with the intention and all the spirits that can help me, remember and feel gratitude. And then I just sit with that for a little bit. Yeah, because I think that just like, and maybe that's where I partly got that from the heart math. You have to, I mean, you don't have to, but I think in order to feel certain things in our life, we have to practice feeling them,
Well put.
maybe outside of the present. Oh, not outside the present moment because that doesn't exist, but outside of, we have to just carve out a specific time to actually experience the feeling. That way we do kind of learn how to have that feeling otherwise. And I think that really goes for any feeling, like joy or pleasure, or else we are just kind of going through the motions. Or maybe also, maybe this goes back to something you were saying before, but taught to kind of have separation between the mind and the body, and feeling isn't necessarily something that is historically looked at as an important function of
Mm,
our being, when in fact it is. So we actually have to practice having certain feelings in order to cultivate them.
yeah. And as you do that, and you have these practices, for me, I find that I've actually become more intelligent. I mean, not to like pat myself on the back, but like having, like having a it's like a certain type of intelligent, like to be able to, really focus on the heart and understand that your heart and brain are connected in a body, and to understand that's how you're experiencing your body.
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes so much sense. I see. It just sounds
Yeah,
funny to
but
say. But yeah,
and
there
then
is, like, there's intelligence in all of your cells. Like, why not harness it? Or not just like this mind, like,
but specifically like the intelligence of gratitude. I mean, that's a specific type of intelligence, or the intelligence of feeling. That's a very specific type of intelligence. And the intelligence of the mind, that's a very specific type of intelligence. And to have all of that, um instead of like having it just be, oh, it's about the mind, and the mind is the thing that's intelligent, and only the mind. Well, that's very limiting.
yeah,
Why wouldn't you want to, like, you know be holistically intelligent? That's what I want.
yeah, I'm down for that. I mean, if you
Intelligence
think about it,
medicine.
like, how many more cells are like from the neck down? I don't know exactly how many are in my brain and the rest of my face. But yeah, I mean, the body's
Having an
has
intelligent
a
body,
lot of intelligence. Yeah.
whole body.
Yeah, it's a
Other
shame that we steered in that direction. I definitely think there's like a trend though now. There's embodiment and somatic experiencing and the breath work. And I think all of that and more, yoga, right? Like that all plays into being present with the body. So you can be present with more of your innate intelligence.
Yeah, yeah. um with the floor chi practice,
Hmm.
when in the Trinity retreats that Christian instructed, where he was instructing to um, go to a point where you feel exerted, but not beyond that. So, like, if you feel like a twinge or like any kind of like pain in your muscle or uncomfort, you back off and immediately go into another direction. I've been using that philosophy just all around for exercise minus jujitsu, because that there's inevitable, you're gonna be uncomfortable. But like as far as like kettlebells and calisthenics and perhaps other practices that I do, even snowboarding, is like going right up until that point where I feel exerted and then backing off. And that seems to definitely be a type of body intelligence that literally, where you're focusing on how your body is feeling, and then once you get to that point where you feel exerted, you back off, you go in another direction, you do something else, and then perhaps when you go back to it, you can do a little bit more. And I find that it's actually something that is has really helped me build strength and get out of like the whole sort of mind dominance you see in the fitness world of like, all right, you got to do like 5 sets of 10, go for it. And rather than that, just like not even having like any type of like rep type of scheme, and just going for like literally what I can do up until when I feel exerted and not going past that point at all. So it definitely trains, the body and the body's feeling. Have you done have you like because I know you've done that practice. So like what have you gotten out of it?
The Florchi.
Yeah, the Forchi, or what's the other one called? There's another one there. Flochi.
Hello body.
Hello body. Yeah, I guess I get confused on like the distinguishing between the three, but you know what I mean.
So the process or the practice is basically laying on the floor and moving your body and feeling as you move your body in a way that feels comfortable for you, and just paying attention to the feelings and sensations and not moving to a point of pain, just so people understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
good thing to preface that.
Yeah. So I practice something similar. First of all, I just love laying on the floor. And I think that's really helpful for like connecting with gravity and just really kind of like relaxation. And I also just practice moving, not necessarily slowly. I more so practice the moving to enjoy how I'm feeling in my body,
Mm. Hmm.
and more of to like feel like pleasurable sensations as I'm moving on the floor. But I also like I do my breath work while I lay there. So you mean you could do the same, just paying attention to how you're breathing as you're moving. And I also do this practice that's designed to help you create.
Mom, mommy.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Well, now's not a good time
Why?
because I'm busy.
But Daddy's in the shower.
All right, what does James want?
A bottle.
No, you can't have a bottle right now.
Why? He really wants one. He's crying.
Well, because we don't have bottles in the middle of the day. Does he want just a cup of milk?
Well, I don't know. James is crying. He wants you.
All right, I have a parenting duty.
What do you think?
You want me to stop the video? Like, what's best for you?
Keep it recording.
Okay.
And
Oh yeah,
then
you could click.
yeah, I could just cut it out. There's no
Okay.
worries.
It's
All
all right.
good. All good.
All right. All right.
Okay.
I don't know what I was saying though. Is there
You
like?
were talking about um laying down, feeling gravity,
Oh yeah, yeah,
enjoying the movements just for the sake
yeah,
of enjoying the sensations in your body.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh, so Dr. Sam also calls it floor play because it is just a way to enjoy your body and like play around. And also, it's helpful with this constricted coping style she talks about, which I relate a lot to, where you're not connected to your like innate kind of innate like animalistic self. So like to feel that. But then also I learned this other practice with the breathing and with focusing on one spot that feels good and not necessarily pleasurable, but just what feels like pleasant or comfortable or, you know, anything that you would associate in that good category. And just focusing on that and also pendulating through movement. So moving from one end of a movement to another as you're doing that. And then that's helpful for building like new I don't know if saying new neural pathways is the right way or is the actual thing, but it's from that teacher that I learned that Brahmari breath from. Her name is Mallory. I forget like how to say her last name, but to just create, yeah, I mean, it's for creating change like within yourself. So it's actually really a powerful practice, the whole laying on the floor. And I think that it speaks a lot to how simple things could really be and how gentle and how easy it could be to really make a change.
Yeah, I just like the way you put it of, with Florchi, moving gently and enjoying the movements just for, the sake of, enjoying the feeling in your body. I definitely resonate with that.
Yeah, I think that's super important. I think that helps to cultivate that intelligence you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. The intelligence of feeling.
Yeah. Or knowing, yeah, just knowing your body, knowing the feelings and knowing the sensations, unfreezing all of that frozen tissue too that hasn't been
Yeah.
paid attention to and has moved past its point of comfort.
Yeah, yeah. And also too, like knowing knowing where you feel discomfort and not provoking it either. Once you feel that discomfort, backing off of it,
Hmm. I
doing
think
something different.
I think sometimes though there is a benefit to feeling a discomfort.
I would agree. I would agree. I think though in the practice though that we're talking about with Florchi, like once you feel uncomfortable, to back off of going in that direction and moving in another direction.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe in your yeah. If you're specifically talking about the floor chi, because I
Yeah,
feel like
just with that one
sometimes,
specifically.
yeah,
But I
'cause-
get what you're saying. I think there's merit to like understanding what discomfort feels like too.
yeah. Oh, and I think it's even more than that. I feel like depending on the discomfort you're talking about, I mean, if it's like pain, it's like ah, get out of this position. But I feel like there's benefit to being in places that might feel like, yeah, whatever. I mean, it's hard to say. Like pain could have so many different flavors, but places that maybe feel uncomfortable and being with it for a little bit of time, like maybe breathing into that space, giving it some of your attention, I think that's really important too. I think that we're just talking about like two totally different things, because I mean, that's like a practice that I have as well. Like being with like discomfort in your body, not in a way like when you're maybe physically exercising, and like that kind of discomfort comes up from like moving your muscles or overloading them. But I think that there is also some benefit to feeling discomfort in your body and
Yeah.
almost giving it like a voice, like a sounding, like what does that part of you want to say, like and like breathing into it, or like letting go, like toning with your voice to really
Yeah.
almost, maybe there's a reason there's some discomfort there,
Yeah.
and like
Also
releasing some
too,
energy associated with that.
yeah. Yeah. What would you say for like, let's say, someone who's injured? Because like you said, like there's varying degrees of uncomfort. And I mean, I know some people who've been injured and who are, in an extreme amount of uncomfort. Sad to watch, honestly.
What did you
but
say?
yeah,
What did you just say?
I'm just saying, like I know people
I
who
didn't hear
are
that
in,
last word you said. Sadawash.
yeah, it's sad to watch, like
Oh,
people
sad to
who,
watch. I
yeah,
didn't hear
yeah,
what you
it's sad
said.
to watch to like, people who I know who've been injured, who have been in a, or are in an extreme amount of uncomfortableness. And it's like when you say like to someone, who's a veteran who's been injured in war, like, like let's just like hang out in that uncomfortableness, it's probably not going to be like the best thing to tell them. I, and I mean, it's just like what we were saying, like varying levels of uncomfortableness. But like how could you use, well, I could actually answer my own question of like how could you use these techniques to like, um better that whole situation, like if someone's feeling like an extreme amount of uncomfort, and specifically with that floor chi, it's really designed to only be going on based of like what your limitations are. So like, if you're feeling specific pain in a certain area, well, don't move that area, go to another area and move that area, and start to loosen up around that area, so that eventually you can then go into the area that's painful and perhaps loosen it up, and keep loosening it up, the areas around it, until perhaps maybe then there could be some ease of pain or uncomfortableness.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I think, kind of we're talking about the same thing, but also like different things.
Yeah, it's hard to distinguish too because we're using the same words.
Yeah, because if you think about pain, right, there's like the physical pain, there's emotional pain. And I think, again, it could be like on a scale, different flavors, burning, itching, stinging, tingling,
Yeah,
like whatever. And not whatever, because I don't want to minimize anybody's pain. But
I get
also
what you're
kind of
saying.
just how we were talking about before, like there's so many layers to our body, like like the energetic and the spiritual and the emotional and the physical. And I don't think you could just like, again, we had this kind of conversation before too, like it's just A plus B plus C. There's not necessarily like a formula. And maybe
Mm,
you are using the floor chi more. I think originally, I think Hamilton did kind of like was guided in creating it more so based on for like physical rehabilitation, right? Like the physical body,
yeah,
right? Like joints. But I
getting the
mean,
lymph system to move. I
mm,
remember him saying that, getting the lymph. I remember
okay.
that
Yeah, I
being
mean, I'm
mentioned
not
in the retreat.
100% certain
I
but
just remember that being mentioned in the retreat.
okay. So I think there's that, but then I also think, for example, you could use the practice too to write, like in a way I was kind of sharing more, like more connecting with the sensations and the feelings, and maybe not necessarily like to like rehab or restore anything. Maybe even kind of the other conversation we were having more of like that connection between your brain and body, or more so cultivating the feelings in your body, just opening up to sensation in general. So I think, we'd have to maybe talk about, right, like what kind of pain are we even talking about here? I mean, and then, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really like, you know, we're I'm not injured, and I don't experience, a massive amount of pain usually. Um, so we're just I mean, I can only speak for myself. I'm only thinking about it theoretically.
I mean, not
Um,
every practice is for everybody.
right, that too. That
I think
too.
it's good to like meet people where they are and what they're comfortable with.
Right, right. I guess my question though is like more like if somebody would ever come up to you and they maybe were injured and like they said like, hey, I heard of this practice, like, could you like relate this to me somehow? It's just more theoretical than anything else. But
I'd have to find out more about their pain, I suppose.
yeah. Yeah. For me though, this is the one thing that I noticed with Forchi in my experience is that it helps me maintain a high level of activity.
Mm.
And so it's like sort of like it is that, um that activity that really gets me connected to the way I'm feeling, how the body's moving, how the body's functioning, and restoring me. So, that I could do some of those higher level or those higher intensity activities, a bit more, or at least maintain it at the level that I am doing it. Um, and yeah, that's what I've noticed for me. And I I've been putting it on my like sort of my weekly regimen to be doing floor chi and qigong, and I like doing those together on the same day, like one right after the other. It's like maybe like 20 minutes of floor chi, 20 minutes of qigong, and then doing that maybe like 3 to 4 days a week. I think I wrote 5 days this coming up week, which I'm going to see if I can get to it or if I have to like restructure my whole regimen or what. But that's what I've noticed with it.
The restorative quality,
Yeah, the restorative quality.
which then allows you to accomplish more. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Those two practices, I'm especially qigong. I've noticed really, really help with opening my imagination. Have you noticed that?
Mm.
Like, I remember because I remember the whole 1 through 10 meditation, and I've just been practicing that on my own, and it's been getting better and better. The visualization of it each time I do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I think I also learned another practice where, yeah, it's definitely using your imagination. The moves are like, I forget what they're all called, but it's like, you're like following the rainbow.
I don't remember that one. Which one was that?
That's not from the one that we did together. This is
Oh,
from a
okay,
different
okay.
practice I learned. Or
That's
like
cool.
you're like rowing the boat on the lake.
And then you imagine a lake rowing and you're
Yeah, and I
rowing and you
think
imagine the rainbow. That's cool.
yeah, I think it's also like for having fun and like cultivating like that joy and playfulness too. That's how it's presented. It was part of the mindfulness based stress reduction class that I participated in. It's
Hmm,
one of the practices, the
nice.
Qigong, and it's these like a series. Yeah, it's all like the kind of like nature outdoorsy base, like parting the clouds or like bringing up the flowers. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
definitely
cool. Like when you
imaginative.
connect your imagination to the natural world and you can imagine flowers, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. So imagination is how I actually mostly use my animal practice to tie it back to what we were originally talking about. So that's mostly how I was going to say interface, use animals in my practices is through my imagination and then kind of like the embodiment of what does that feel like
Mm,
to learn from
Yeah,
them.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And I remember you mentioned um about a power animal that teaches you the power of patience.
Yeah,
I
like that
find,
might be the spirit animal. I think I was maybe just using that as an example, but yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have an animal of that. I think I was just giving an example. I learned patience from I think of patience, well, like from the Divine Mother, but I also get patience from Mary Magdalene.
uh,
Like it's funny saying that.
Mary, Mary
Hmm.
Magdalene. Yeah, I don't invoke her often, but I always love when she shows up. Yeah, that
I think
energy.
patience is just like, it's up there hand in hand with just like the grace and just allowing everything to be exactly as it is and having patience for everything. It really goes hand in hand with I don't know, I think of those things as like, I don't know why I say ultimate, but like just the most important, like really essential, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. I just a thought that came to mind too is that they're essential for health. Patience, is essential for health,
Yeah.
mentally, physically. I don't really see, a complete separation of it.
Yeah. I used to think of patience as something like you have or you don't have. But I started seeing it as more of just something you could like kind of like tap into. Like
And
it's never not
cultivate.
there.
Yeah, the way you described it before as, a power, I think that's really accurate because it is something that you can cultivate and you could gain those capabilities of being patient. I was going to say too, you just said that as an example, but I mean, you can hold a ceremony and you can, direct your principal power animal to bring you a power animal that teaches you patience.
Mm,
That actually sounds like something that I need.
yeah. I mean, patience is just like, mm, it's like soft and gentle, like nurturing and loving and supportive.
Yeah, it's, something that is benevolent. It's based in benevolency. It
Hmm.
serves your highest self.
Yeah, I don't think you could go wrong with that. I need a lot of
No.
it from my kids. And then when I don't have it for them, I need a lot for me.
Having patience for yourself.
Or
Yeah.
when I fuck it up.
Yeah, I would say for me, that's definitely been a challenge for me.
Patience.
I need a power animal that teaches me
Yeah.
patience. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I mean, I think you could learn patience a lot from nature as well, because I mean, everything happens as it happens. Like nothing in the natural world is rushed. Like everything just kind of has its time and its place
Mm,
and its season. And in the wintertime, you're not planting things and preparing. You're kind of just letting things like rest. I mean, it is a sort of preparation, right? But like everything's just, it has like its time and it's,
yeah, you wouldn't like go out in like February and plant a seed and be like, why aren't you fully grown yet?
yeah, exactly. Or I mean, too, right? Like thinking about like the whole season of something growing.
Yeah,
It all has its like the sequence that it has to follow.
well put. Well put. Teaching me about patience.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because my mom always used to tell me that I don't have any,
Same.
but I think I've cultivated quite a lot of it.
Yeah, I see that with you for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think because I have like that role as a mom, so it's probably most important for me to have it with my children.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, just before, as your kids came upstairs and they asked you for something, you were very
Yeah.
patient.
You know what's interesting about that though? So when Louis doesn't have patience for the kids, I have no patience for him. That's like my one. That's probably like my area of growth, actually, because it's been a while.
Well, there you go. You know what you need to work on.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes have it, and then I sometimes don't. I actually just was listening to. I told you about John O'Donohue, and he has these other recordings.
The
He's
author?
Irish, yeah, the
Yeah,
Irish
yeah.
author, and among other things, like theologian, poet.
Hmm.
Um, but he has these talks, so I've been listening to them, and he talks about the place of contradictions and how because of the kind of like creation of like probably linearity, which he doesn't really talk about, but duality, where everything has to be like this or that, that we don't allow ourselves these spaces of contradiction inside of ourselves. So then we're really like missing out because that place of contradiction is where you have that's like your edge, the edge, and that's where you have the expansion to do. To kind of that's
Hmm.
where the exploration is.
Yeah, yeah. It's the paradox,
Yeah.
the whole principle of a paradox is like, how can it be both these things at once?
Yeah. Well, it's everything.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely haven't moved beyond every paradox in my own mind, but I know there are certain ones that I've moved beyond, and I've noticed exactly as you said it that it definitely opens up an area or space, however you would like to say it, where it's just completely fresh and new and something to explore, and where you gain a little more insight of reality and what's going on and the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess without that, that would just reminded me that's what he was talking about, I think, is how they were forget the person's name who originally came up with I don't know if he was originally, but came up with the definition of what truth is. And that kind of has to do with that, right? It could only be the one thing, that it can't be more than other things. So he was talking about John O'Donohue was talking about how that's, one of the detriments, because this was like at the time of I want to say like the person's name was Platonius. I don't know. And then like it was something Aristotle expanded on. So it was like a very long time ago in our consciousness, in the
Mhm.
history or like
As
that,
a species, yeah.
yeah, that then it's like something that plagues us. And I think that's interesting too, because like I've come to that too, how it's, like that linearness, which is kind of what we were talking about before, is really like a detriment to life in general. Yeah, I
Well,
mean, it's hard to say, like not all of linearity, obviously, like
maybe being caught in like thinking that linearity is the only time. I
yeah,
know that was
not
something
even
that I,
related
I
to
was caught in.
time, not even related to time. In the same way we were just talking about it, linearity related to has to be this way or that way. It has to,
Or truth, like as you said, like that limiting definition of truth of like this is the truth and this is, like what'd you say? Like this is all of what it is, or something like that.
well, like I don't know, just
You were
before
saying,
or earlier.
yeah, yeah, you were saying like just before where you said like where they were saying like I mean you were saying how this person was saying where they had this definition of truth where it was like this can only be this thing and only this
Yeah.
way, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very limiting
I think there's
understanding.
maybe no contradictions in it. I forget what it was.
Yeah, because I mean, oftentimes the truth is like it's both ways at once.
Yeah, I
It's
mean
like
that's the thing when there's like,
how can there be more than one form of time? How can there be like linear time and the now time? It's
well,
just
right. Well, because
because there
linear
is.
time is just like the label given to something
Yes.
else. Well, no, not to something else, but that there is like this other thing inherent to existence.
Yeah, and I always find it interesting that linear time exists in the now. It exists in the now time.
Well, right, that's the only thing, the only place things could exist. I
Yeah.
think he was talking about Platonius for someone else. That might not have been who. Because like
Mm.
I said, I listened to, this was called, what I was listening to is called, well, one I listened to his talks on beauty, and then this one that I was listening to is called, oh, The Inner Landscape. The Inner Landscape. So I think it might have been in the beauty thing he was talking about Platonius. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Oh
I
yeah.
just find it fascinating how like dudes from thousands of years ago are still influencing the mind today.
I know. Sometimes, I mean, I don't want to be, it's almost like that idea of like we're better than animals. I sometimes think like, how'd they know so much back then? Because like their ideas really
Oh yeah.
shape today. How'd they know so much?
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I guess you know what I was thinking, because I get confused sometimes about mythology and how does that exist? Like the symbolism in these stories, because the symbolism is like what's underneath everything, really. It's under the concrete. I was thinking, I wonder because if like it wasn't, everything was so kind of like set with like so much time, like with the, I don't think they had, I don't know when linear time started. I think like with the Babylonians,
I don't
but I'm
know.
not sure of
Good
like
question.
the, you know, how widespread the use was. People probably were still using more like the moon cycles and like the seasonal cycles. So I wasn't sure if it was like that linear time fermentation, not fermentation, like clamping down, and also the like then the linearity of like the written word that kind of like really limited our ability to think beyond the linear.
Yeah, and like um I just thought about, sort of the paradox when you think about linear time and use it to um use it in the way of thinking about it of like, okay, like if you're telling a story about the past and like you're saying like, okay, and in the past, like I went on a hike and then after, using the word after, right? I just find this a very interesting use of words, how like the word after meaning later in some scenarios, but in this scenario it's meaning, before but after I went on the hike, I went and got something to eat. It's like it reminds me of teaching in modern shamanism, where it's essentially saying like linear time is not so linear after all, and it's like,
Mm,
well, there's the paradox,
yeah,
and to move beyond it and understand like
the paradox of time.
yeah, the paradox of linear time really not being so linear after all.
Yeah, I mean it's a super relational tool. That's what I really thought of when you were saying that. You know, it just
Yeah,
makes, we could understand so much, you know, have an understanding together.
yeah. Perhaps it is just that it's that tool, it's a conceptual tool to be able to measure out the past and measure time into the future.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I mean if you really like think about it as a concept, and I don't know, it's just pretty cool. It's a pretty cool concept. I love talking about I love talking about time because it's just so fascinating.
Yeah. I like too how you could like break it down into this, I mean, a nanosecond. Is there anything like smaller than a nanosecond?
Is what's an atomic second? Is that a nanosecond? I don't know.
I don't know. But then also, right, like you could go out like centuries and eons and
Yeah. Yeah, and then like you get to like the scale of things. It's like how long does the sun take to turn around the galaxy?
oh yeah, I was just looking up the sun, but I don't remember what that is now. I'm never
You're
gonna.
looking up the sun.
I was trying to find who that person was because I don't think I was giving the right name, but I'm never gonna be able to find that. I'll have to like read back to it
Probably old dead dude.
or listen back to it, I suppose. Well, yeah, definitely an old dead dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's getting to be about my lunchtime.
Yeah. Well,
Getting
today was
hungry.
another fascinating exploration.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. About, power animals and time, gratitude.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for the conversation.
of course.
I always get something positive out of it.
Yeah, same. I learned a lot.
Oh yeah.
My intelligence grows.
Yeah, I really I like thinking about it as like different forms of intelligence. Like that's how I like over the summer started to really think about it is like, wow, there's like many different forms of intelligence. And it's like something I always knew about. But then I started to like relate it to my own experience of like, well, in which ways am I intelligent? Or
Mm,
which way am I intelligent? And
yeah.
I think everyone, is intelligent in their own way and
I mean, how could you not
feeling
be?
right, right. I mean, but like just looking at like, I mean, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is like there's different categories, and what are those categories? Well, I would categorize feeling as a certain type of intelligence. I would categorize, mentality as a certain type of intelligence or mental intelligence, and et cetera, et cetera. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess kind of just tying it back to the conversation, there's just no one way. And then we're a conglomeration of, 40 trillion cells, all the different systems, all of the different, I don't know if it's only systems, but
Mm,
all of that intelligence combined in the body. And then also like the connections that we have, like spiritually and energetically. I think, I don't know, it's really immeasurable. I mean, I don't know, how do you measure, you can measure IQ,
right.
but that's like one specific thing. And then a lot of stuff is based on that, which kind of, again, what you're saying, right? There's more than one.
Yeah, and it's about what works for you.
Yeah, I think it's important to know what
Absolutely.
what your intelligence is, like what, right, what you're good at. But I think it's important to maybe be open to that. It could be really anything. And even if maybe one thing isn't strong or cultivated or whatever word you want to use there, doesn't mean you can't
Yeah.
develop that.
Yeah, and it reminds me of what my Spanish teacher teaches me is this concept of learning how to learn and
Mm,
your
yeah.
and your own unique intelligence on, learning how you actually learn something and then,
Yeah. Well, why would
yeah.
school teach you that?
Yeah, right. Why would they teach you
Why
that?
would you want to learn that? They only cater to one way. That would just be a whole can of worms to open
Yeah,
up.
maybe on
Anyway, I
another
think we're
episode.
signing off.
Maybe on another episode we could talk about that. I
To
like
rein it
talking about.
in.
Yeah, let's rein it in. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. If you've listened up to this point now, uh, yeah, yeah, just definitely want to say, gratitude for these conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
All right. Bye.
All right.